My husband left me for his assistant, but she didn't know I already planned everything. I found out the hard way, not from him, not from her. From a text message forwarded by my sister, it was a photo of him and his assistant, sitting too close, smiling like they shared a secret only they knew. The timestamp was last weekend, exactly the day I was hosting my father's birthday dinner. I stared at that screen for minutes, no sound, no tears. Just cold silence inside. I didn't call him, didn't confront her, didn't even open my phone again for hours. The rest of the night passed in a blur of forced smiles and empty toasts. He came home late that night, smelling like cheap perfume and failure. I asked if he had work meetings. He lied, as usual. This time, I let it slide. I needed time. Days later, he announced he was moving out, said he needed space and to figure things out. The assistant? She was suddenly on the company's social media, posted a photo at his apartment. The caption was casual, too casual, like it was normal. I wasn't shocked, I was ready. Because this wasn't the first time I suspected. I had noticed the late hours, the secret texts, the hushed phone calls, but I ignored them. For years. I told myself it was paranoia, loyalty, love. Now I knew the truth. I spent the next week gathering everything: emails, receipts, screenshots, the little things that didn't fit his story, the charges on his credit card that matched her favorite restaurant, the taxi apps showing rides to her place. I froze them all, changed passwords, closed accounts. I called my lawyer. I didn't want revenge, I wanted control. Control over the mess he left behind. The business we built together was still mine to protect. The house, the bank accounts, the investments, all tied to me. He might have taken my trust, but he wouldn't take my future. I began reorganizing the finances, moved money into new accounts he couldn't access, changed passwords on everything digital, locked down the business emails, canceled credit cards in his name. No warning, no explanation, just actions. Every phone call I made, every document I signed, tightened the noose. When he came to collect his things, I handed him a list. Not a speech, not a plea. A list of what he owed, what was his responsibility. He laughed, called me cold, said I'd regret this. I didn't care. This was just the beginning. Nights turned into restless hours filled with planning. I charted every legal angle, every loophole he thought he could use. I wasn't giving him an inch, not after everything. He thought this was a breakup. It was a takeover. I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. After the dust settled from his departure, I knew the real fight was just beginning. It wasn't enough to block his access and lock down the finances. He was clever. He had contacts, backup plans. If I didn't act fast and precise, I risked losing everything we built. I started by mapping every shared asset. The house, the accounts, the investments, every joint business venture. I made calls, dug through paperwork, and talked to lawyers. My goal was simple: make sure he couldn't touch a cent without my say. That meant freezing accounts, updating ownership titles, and transferring control. I moved fast. No announcements, no drama, just silent action. While he thought he was starting fresh, I was tightening my grip. Then I turned to the business. It was partly his pride, partly my leverage. I checked every contract, every client list, every supplier agreement. I wanted to ensure continuity, but also remove any influence he might still have. I notified key clients of the leadership change without mentioning details. I assured them stability and continuity. I restructured internal teams to centralize control. No loose ends. At the same time, I began gathering proof. Conversations he'd denied, expenses he tried to hide, emails that contradicted his story. It wasn't about revenge, it was about protection and accountability. I prepared for the inevitable legal battle. My lawyer helped me draft demands. I knew he'd try to contest everything: the separation, the assets, even the business. But I was ready. Every day, I sent updates to my legal team. Every questionable move he made was documented. I stayed 2 steps ahead. To keep the pressure, I limited his access even further. Changed locks, canceled keys, revoked permissions. His attempts to reach me or the business were ignored or politely denied. I also ensured I had the emotional support and distance needed. I stopped answering his calls, blocked his messages, deleted his social media. No contact meant no leverage. My focus was on rebuilding, alone if needed. The cold truth was that this wasn't just about him leaving me. It was about taking back control of my life and future, about not letting betrayal define me or my success. Every late night I worked on the plan, and every morning I woke determined to see it through. Because this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The day everything changed arrived quietly without fanfare or warning. I was sitting at my desk, going through emails and contracts when my lawyer called. The tone was serious, but there was a hint of satisfaction underneath. "They're pushing back," he said. Your ex filed a motion to contest the asset freeze. He's claiming the agreements are invalid because of duress and lack of consent. I didn't flinch. I was expecting this. He thought he could intimidate me, make me crumble. Instead, it only made me stronger. We went through every document, every email, every note. Every step I had taken was legal, documented, and airtight. My lawyer drafted a counter motion with everything in place. Meanwhile, at work, the atmosphere shifted. The team I had rebuilt was solid, but the whispering started. Some colleagues took sides. Some watched carefully. No one wanted to be caught in the middle, but I didn't care about office politics anymore. My focus was on the bigger picture. Then came the call from our biggest client. They'd heard rumors about the dispute. They wanted reassurance. I spoke directly, calmly, without excuses or promises, just facts. We have the leadership and structure in place to continue delivering, I said. We're committed to our agreements and our clients. The client accepted the answer. Contracts renewed. Back home, the tension was worse. My ex reached out once, a message that read like a threat wrapped in a plea. I deleted it without reading. Days later, his lawyer sent an offer, a proposal to settle out of court, split assets in a way that made sense, and move on. I forwarded it to my lawyer. We discussed. The offer was insulting, a clear attempt to minimize his losses at my expense. We rejected it. I wasn't about to settle for crumbs. The legal battle became a slow grind. I attended meetings, signed papers, provided testimony. I kept every interaction professional, unemotional, and precise. I learned his new partner was trying to leverage her influence to help him. Connections, favors, backroom deals. It didn't matter. The law was on my side. One evening, I received a subpoena for a deposition. He wanted me to testify about everything. The marriage, the business, the finances. I prepared carefully. I stuck to facts. No anger, no drama. The day of the deposition, I was ready. I told the truth, calmly and clearly. I described how I found out about the betrayal, how I protected the assets, how I continued the business. Every lie he told was exposed by documentation, by witnesses, by my lawyer's thoroughness. Weeks passed. The court ruled in my favor. The freeze on assets became permanent. The business and property were legally mine. He lost his claim. The victory wasn't loud. No celebrations. Just a quiet acknowledgement that justice was served. But the fallout was real. Our social circles fractured. Friends chose sides. Some disappeared. His new partner distanced herself. He retreated into silence. I rebuilt from the ashes. I hired new staff, expanded operations, and finally reclaimed peace. I didn't need to humiliate him publicly. The truth was enough. I moved on with my life, stronger and more cautious. The betrayal had left scars, but it also forged a new version of me, a chapeau, tougher, smarter, and unbreakable. This was my fallout, and I owned it. This is the end of the first story. Honestly, this story hits different. It's not just about betrayal, it's about taking back control when everything falls apart. No dramatic speeches or breakdowns, just smart moves and cold, calculated decisions. It's raw, real, and reminds me that sometimes the strongest response isn't revenge, but knowing your worth and protecting what's yours. Feels like a blueprint for anyone who's been burned but refuses to be broken. And now, let's move on to the next story. I found out my sister was secretly dating my ex, and they planned to keep it from me. It started with a message I wasn't supposed to see. A notification popped up on my phone while I was scrolling through social media at a family barbecue. I glanced over and there it was. A photo of my sister and my ex, sitting at a cafe, heads close, laughing like they were the only two people in the world. The caption was cryptic, something like "New Beginnings" with a heart emoji. My heart stopped, not because of shock, but because of something deeper. Betrayal, disbelief, and a knot of anger I hadn't felt before. I'd been with my ex for 4 years. My sister? We'd grown up inseparable, sharing everything. Or so I thought. I sat there, phone clenched in my hand, trying to process. Everyone was around, laughing, drinking, playing games. No one knew what I just saw. No one knew what I was about to find out. Later that night, I went digging. I didn't want to believe it, but I needed proof. I found messages, late-night texts, photos, plans to meet, shared jokes, months of secrecy, months of lies. It wasn't just a fling. It was deliberate, calculated. They'd planned to keep it from me. Both of them. The worst part was realizing how much of my life they'd been in together while pretending everything was fine with me. My sister was always asking about my ex like she cared. My ex was supportive, always telling me to be happy for my sister. I confronted my sister first. I needed to hear it from her. I needed to know why. She denied it, said I was paranoid, jealous, said I was overreacting. She accused me of trying to sabotage her happiness. I confronted my ex next. Same story. He said it was complicated, that I was making mountains out of molehills, that I should move on. I felt isolated, like I was the crazy one. But I had the proof. The family started noticing tension. Rumors spread. Some relatives whispered. Others avoided me. At one point, I caught my sister texting my ex when she thought no one was watching. They laughed at a joke I never heard. It was a moment where I realized they didn't care about hiding anymore, just about controlling the narrative. I stopped answering her calls, deleted her from social media, blocked my ex everywhere. The silence was loud. At a family dinner, my uncle asked why I was so distant lately. I didn't answer. The question hung in the air, heavy and accusing. I began writing down every lie, every excuse, every denial. Every time they said, "It's nothing," I recorded it, because soon it wouldn't be nothing anymore. I decided to gather everyone, not just my immediate family, but cousins, aunts, uncles, the ones who knew me and the ones who didn't. I wanted to expose the truth before they could spin their web tighter. When the day came, I showed the messages, the photos, the texts. I spoke clearly without shouting or tears. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. Some faces twisted in shock, others in anger. A few looked away. The fallout was instant. My sister denied everything, but no one believed her. My ex tried to explain, but his words fell flat. The family split. Some sided with me, others with them. The house felt colder. Conversations stopped. Invitations ceased. I lost more than I expected, but I found something too. Clarity. I realized who truly mattered and who didn't. This was my discovery, my breaking point, and my first step away. The moment I exposed the truth, I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. The battle had just begun, and it was uglier than I ever imagined. Both my sister and my ex refused to admit anything. Instead, they unleashed a storm of lies and twisted the story to paint me as the villain. I was shocked, but not surprised. First, I confronted my sister alone, hoping for some honesty, some shred of remorse. I needed answers. I needed to hear her side. Instead, I was met with cold denial and cutting accusations. When I showed her the texts, the photos, the evidence of months-long betrayal, her face didn't flinch. She stared at me with a blank expression, like I was the crazy one. "You're paranoid," she said, voice low but steady. "You're making mountains out of molehills. You're jealous and trying to ruin what I have. You're the one who betrayed the family." Her words hit like a slap, sharp and unexpected. I tried to speak, to reason, but she cut me off. "I'm happy now," she added coldly. "I deserve that. You don't get to control my life anymore." I left that conversation feeling hollow, betrayed in a way deeper than the secret affair itself. This wasn't just about my ex. This was about the sister I thought I knew turning against me. Then came the confrontation with my ex. I went to his apartment late at night. I wasn't sure what I expected. Apologies? Anger? Relief. Instead, he laughed at me, told me I was making a big deal out of nothing, that I was stuck in the past and needed to move on. He called me irrational and obsessive, said the whole thing was complicated and that I was overreacting. I told him the truth, that I had proof, and I wasn't backing down. He shifted uncomfortably but still refused to take responsibility. His words were hollow, a defense mechanism that didn't fool me. He looked away when I spoke, the bravado fading. Meanwhile, the secret was no longer a secret. Whispers spread through family gatherings. Some relatives took my side, others sided with them, unwilling to believe the scandal. I was left isolated, fighting against a tide of disbelief and betrayal. I tried to reach out to my sister, hoping for reconciliation or at least closure. She blocked me on all platforms, erased me from her life without a word. My ex went silent too, disappearing from places we once shared. At family events, I was the outsider. Invitations stopped coming. Phone calls went unanswered. It was clear my world had fractured, but I refused to break. I documented every interaction, every lie, every denial. I recorded conversations, saved messages, collected proof. I wasn't just fighting for truth, I was fighting for myself. Each day was a struggle to stay sane, to hold on to who I was. I navigated the minefield of broken trust and shattered relationships, trying to rebuild from the ruins. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was war, and I was ready to win. The fallout hit harder than anything I had expected. After I confronted both my sister and my ex, I thought I had faced the worst. But what came next wasn't just a broken family, and it was a complete collapse of trust, a redefinition of relationships, and a challenge to my own sense of self. It was brutal, messy, and painfully real. Family gatherings stopped being warm. They became cold, tense affairs where smiles were forced and laughter felt like a performance. I could feel eyes watching me, whispering just out of earshot, judging without words. Invitations to holidays or dinners that used to arrive without question suddenly stopped. Calls went unanswered. Texts were ignored. The silence was louder than any insult. Relatives took sides. Some, the ones I never expected, stood with my sister and my ex, dismissing my evidence and my feelings as jealousy, paranoia, or bitterness. They told me to forgive, to move on, to stop making a scene. Others tried to stay neutral, but even silence was a statement. The person who should have been my closest family now felt like strangers or worse, enemies in a war I never asked to fight. The house I grew up in, once a refuge, became a battlefield. Rooms echoed with the ghosts of arguments not spoken but felt in every glance. Holidays turned into minefields where every word was weighed and every gesture measured. I stopped going, choosing solitude over hostility. My sister and ex played their parts masterfully. They spun a story where I was the villain, the obsessive, unstable one destroying family bonds with accusations, and anger. They became the victims in their own narrative, garnering sympathy from those willing to listen. Their words poisoned the well, turning relatives against me with stories that twisted the truth beyond recognition. I was labeled as the troublemaker, the one tearing the family apart. The bitterness I felt was painted as malice. The pain I endured was dismissed as weakness or failure to forgive. But beneath all the noise, I held on to the truth. I had the proof, the messages, the photos, the facts. I stood firm in my reality. I wasn't wrong. I was the one who had been betrayed. Rebuilding my life was slow and painful. I cut ties with those who chose silence or sided against me without reason. I embraced the friends who stood by me, those who listened without judgment and offered support when I needed it most. Work became my anchor, my place to focus and rebuild strength outside of the chaos. Forgiveness wasn't on the table, not then, not ever. The wounds were too deep, the betrayal too raw. What I sought was peace, a quiet mind, a steady heart, and the ability to move forward on my own terms. Over time, some family members began to see cracks in the perfect picture my sister and ex had painted. They noticed inconsistencies, heard whispers of the truth from others. Not everyone believed me, but enough did to change the dynamic. Truth, no matter how deeply buried, has a way of emerging. The scars from this chapter remain, visible and invisible. They are reminders of loss and betrayal, but also of survival and resilience. I am no longer the naive person who trusted blindly. I am someone who stands strong, who values honesty over appearances, and refuses to be silenced by lies. This was my fallout, and from it, I rose.